even though I love going in and going through the process, but why at the end of it? Like I finish a thing and I say, okay, I did this.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sell it. I guess I could post it on Instagram and share it with your friends.
Yeah, so you can still get it out there, but it's still like, what is the end goal?
What is the end goal? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hello, all my lovely persistent creatives out there. Thank you for joining me on the Sage Arts Podcast. This is Sage, and I am not alone this time. I am in a actually very full room. River's on the lounge with Brett. Ember was, but she got tired of the puppy. She's not really into the puppy, so she's under the desk. So we'll see. We wanted to do this for a while, but it's been really hard with a puppy. She really hasn't been able to be out of her crate. Restricted for a long time.
Sentenced to jail.
Sentenced to her cage.
Yeah, while her little leg
heals.
while
her leg heals.
Yep.
So I thought we'd bring Brett in today and see if we can manage it with the two dogs.
Yeah, it'll be an adventure.
Yeah, it might have more background noise than usual. We'll see what we can work with. So
we'll tolerate it. My God.
You just know that we're surrounded by puppies. In any case, we thought we'd come together today and talk about something that came up actually with a couple other creative friends of ours. And it was about motivation, but really about the kind of when you hit bottom kind of thing, when you just are wondering why are you doing this art? Why are you bothering with it? And we thought we'd kind of exchange some stories. But I guess first of all, Brett, why bother?
Oh, bother.
Oh, bother.
Oh, bother. That's Winnie the Pooh. Oh, bother.
Oh, bother. Why bother? Why do you bother? Why do you do art?
I don't know. I have no idea. It's a drive, I suppose.
Right.
And I just keep going in, but there are times when it's really hard. And I think my idea of what it meant to be creative when I was really young is very different as I've gotten older.
Yeah.
So that's been something I've had to digest over the years. And it's sometimes demotivating because it doesn't feel as like, wow, as cool as you think, the glory of it is. And it's really just the work, like your last podcast,
Yeah, the hard work stuff.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I think I really think the last podcast was me preaching to myself because we'll talk about what my issue is with the whole sense of sometimes why am I trying so hard? Why am I working so hard? But sometimes I think we have a bit of a dichotomy with this particular issue. What you and I experience with these kind of rock bottom positions that we get into or situations that we get into.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of instances, especially lately, where I have really been questioning why I'm doing what I'm doing, because a lot of what I do right now is very hard. We have a lot of stuff going on. It's very hard to concentrate sometimes and to get into a routine because between the dog and the house and whatever else we have, family stuff going on.
Life gets in the way.
Oh my gosh, it certainly does. So when I do sit down to try to work on my painting, sometimes I'm like, why am I bothering? Number one, I'm going to get interrupted again.
Yeah, well, with painting, there's so much setup for you,
it's
right?
hard to do. Yeah, it's hard to do just kind of off the cuff stuff.
Because you might get interrupted during your setup, and then you have to unset it up.
Yeah, I have to unset it up. Yeah, I've had times in my life where I do really question why I'm doing it. Why am I trying to make a living as an artist? It's really, really hard. I'm never going to get rich. I'm never going to get ahead, But, that's actually a big reason why I ended up doing the magazine, because I was like, do I want to continue to do shows and to sell one thing at a time? And I was looking for something that could combine both of my interests, both art and writing, and going into magazine and publishing was my answer. So it's a matter of getting to know yourself. But there were times where I was like, why am I doing this? There were times when I was doing the magazine where I'm like, why am I doing this? Oh my gosh, I get no sleep. But I had a passion for it.
Yeah, and it wasn't clearly not about the money.
It was never
about being famous, but you wanted enough of a rapport with an audience so you could get compensated for it, so it was viable, and your time wouldn't get stolen by whatever waiting
else.
Tables or whatever it would be. Yeah.
So I've had kind of ups and downs throughout my life. And I think for you, I mean, you have always had an identity as an artist.
You're talking about the dog or me?
Well, this dog has a definite identity, but it's not about being an artist.
I'm being silly. Okay. I mean, I've had a very, I think, unusual path in so much that I've always known what I wanted to do. And I was lucky in the fact that I got to go to school for it, and I fit into the professional context of it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. You're, lucky to have the talent that you have and to have a art form that gets paid.
Yeah.
And gets paid well,
And it's timing and context, because there was a time that it wasn't so easy to work in animation, so it wasn't so easy to get a job in animation.
Well, and that's
still
true
not easy
now, right?
And it's still, it's true right now, actually.
Right now, it's particularly hard at this time.
Yeah.
Aside from your professional career, which has been fantastic that you get to do something that you love for a living and, do well, but you have your own personal work.
Yeah, as a kid, since I was about, since I could hold a pencil, I guess you'd say, 4, 5, 6, 7, I would do comics, and there was never a sense of why bother or why should I be doing this. So I spent most of my childhood and teenage years doing that. And then when I got into being a professional artist, what I got handed to me, and I didn't even realize it, was the idea of having a deadline. Like, okay, here's what you got to do, and you got to do it by this date because, of course, there's money on the line for the studio and all that.
Yeah.
So, and I liked it. I didn't know I liked it. I just did it because I got to do this by this time. But it is motivating.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, it gets you to produce,
Yeah.
And I didn't understand the psychology of that until now that I'm older, I can see it. So then when I do my own work now, I am persevering and I am doing it, but there's a different motivation involved, when I don't have a deadline outside of myself.
Yeah, but you've gone back and forth on some of the art forms that you have wanted to do. And some of them, like going and doing your own cartoons, you kind of done a why bother with some of that stuff, right? Because it's like the whole process and what you would have to do with it. You'd have to find a team, you'd have to find publication, you'd have to find all these things that you're not used to having to find.
And I also had some, learning curves that, I would have to go through. I don't necessarily like to do the PR and the business stuff.
Yeah, no. I understand. I don't like it either. But
I just want to go and do it, you know?
Yeah.
And not really be, I don't know if the right word is told what to do, but I like to uncover it for myself, whatever it is, whatever those challenges are. When I engage my own work, I have all of these story ideas and also just art that I like to produce in my sketchbooks and in other ways, painting, oil painting, and sometimes abstract and things that I like to feel free within, That all works, but there's less pressure involved, even though I love going in and going through the process. But why at the end of it? Like I finish a thing and I say, okay, I did this.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sell it. I guess I could post it on Instagram and share it with your friends.
Yeah, so you can still get it out there, but it's still like, what is the end goal?
What is the end goal? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit like if you're goal-oriented, and especially in our culture with capitalism and the way it works, and what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, what are you going to do with it?
What kind of impact are because I've been thinking about impact lately. What can I do with this love that I have for it?
Yeah.
And how can I share it in a way that is productive and
has an
people
effect
would get
on
something?
people? Yeah. Because
it.
you have that with your professional work, and you have professed that one of the reasons you do it is just to make people smile and make people laugh.
Yeah.
And you get that, and you get that.
I do what I love, and it makes myself laugh. But when I think of the people who watch it, it is very motivating to think of the fun that they have.
Right. Well, it's a wonderful thing to be able to affect people. And some people might think that, cartoons aren't serious art or whatever, but they do have a serious effect. In fact, we watched a movie. What was that movie? The one where the guy at the end ended up on a chain gang, and then he realized that the only thing that chain gang people had was when they went and saw a movie at the church.
Oh, you're talking about the Preston Sturges movie called Sullivan's Travels?
Sullivan's Travels, that's right. So I don't know, this is an older movie. We love black and whites, and on Sundays, this is kind of a thing that we do.
In this movie, Sullivan's Travels, it was about struggle and hardship.
Right. So yeah.
And this Hollywood producer is like, doesn't know anything about those things because he's very rich and very successful. So he decides to leave all of his riches and live in a different way on
live
the
like
streets.
like a bum.
Yeah.
Live
Back
like a
in those
hobo,
days, you called it a
actually, is what
hobo.
was. Yeah. And he kept thinking he needed to make a serious movie because that would give value to what he was doing.
He wanted to make a difference. Really
But then
interesting
at the
idea.
end, he ends up on this chain gang as a hard labor prisoner.
Accidentally. Yeah.
Accidentally.
He actually ends up really having...
He wasn't supposed to.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be done with it.
Well,
and
we're
then
going
he
to
ends up
spoil
with
it for everybody, but yeah.
Well, but I wanted
Go see it.
to understand that at the end of it, the chain gang goes to this little church who's doing a film, who's doing films, cartoons, right?
Yeah.
They're doing cartoons.
Yeah.
That's right.
They showed, this is the 40s, so they showed an old Mickey Mouse cartoon.
Right.
And what kind of joy it gave all of
Everybody's
these
laughing and
people
having
on
a
the
great
chain
time.
gang.
And that was like the only thing they got. And he sat there thinking, oh my gosh, this matters to people.
Yeah.
I just like how it pointed out that you don't have to do serious or fine art for it to enrich someone's life. So, and that's an important thing. And it's actually, we're kind of probably getting ahead of ourselves. The fact that a lot of what we do, we don't see the effect necessarily. We put our art out there and we don't get the feedback.
Don't get the visceral reaction.
Yeah. Now, if you do art shows, which is something I didn't like to do, but when I did do art shows or I was at art shows and I could talk to people and I could stand off to the side in the gallery room and hear people react to my work, which was like the most amazing thing because most of the time you don't get to hear anything. Or you hear it from family or friends or people who are going to be kind of, rooting for you anyways and cheer you on. But we don't always get the feedback, which is a bit of an issue because now we go to social media and we try to get all the likes and we get all those comments on there.
And it's so easy right there in our hand.
Yeah.
That's where we get feedback and where we get our audience.
Which is great on one hand because we do get feedback. Mm-hmm. But there's so many downfalls as well.
There are.
So let's actually, because that's going to kind of be a little bit of a chunk of what we're going to talk about. So we thought, okay, when we do get to a point where we're really questioning what we're doing, when that happens, why are we feeling that way? Why is it that we get to that point? So we came up with a list. I'm going to go through the list really quickly, and then we're going to kind of go through each point, kind of talk about maybe what happens and what we can do about it. We came up with one, comparing ourselves to others on social media, which is a big one these days, right?
Yep.
It can also come from ingrained expectations like we should make money at it or get awards or get accolades and believe that we should be seeing something from it that's measurable.
Like a success marker.
Yeah, right, exactly. We could have frustrations with the skill that we have or that it's hard, like what I'm dealing with right now, trying to get back into it, but not having the routine to actually get a practice going. But it's hard, and sometimes you just want to give up. There's also being just not sure of what to create and lacking inspiration. And why is that? Why do we sometimes just feel like we don't have anything to say? There's also times when we're just not excited by our materials anymore, like we just don't enjoy it. Maybe it feels like work, or maybe it just isn't a challenge any longer. Also, honestly, there are outside situations that often affect our ability to see our art as valuable as it is. And it could be, things like grief, depression, we have health issues, or even just lack of new input because we're not getting out there and feeding our muse when we're busy, like we've been. Mm-hmm. So those are the primary things we came up with. I had this other thought, and I'm not going to talk about it now, but at the end, I want to talk about something that isn't about solving these issues.
Oh,
that I think may actually, that I think might actually be like how we see it. So in any case, so listen to the end and then, let me know what you think. If you are at that point where you're not feeling like you can find the value in what you're doing, look at why, first of all. So if you can spend time figuring out why you're in that position and then also what you need from your artwork, and
that changes over time.
It does. Yeah. For me, it's usually the experience. I want the experience. That's why I'm doing it. That's primarily what I need from it. I just need the process. I need to go through the process. I need to go through the journey and have the experience of creating. That's the most important thing to me. But there's a problem these days, and we can start with the first thing on that list was the social media stuff. It can be really hard to spend time on social media and look at everything else that other people are doing. And you see all these amazing things that people are doing, and you just start to feel like...
it can inspire you on the one hand. On the other hand...
It can make you feel like you suck.
It can make you feel like yeah.
Like I'm not good, or I'm not that good, or I'll never be that good, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
And
compare.
compare, yeah.
Yeah, and every post is how wonderful their life is. It's not that their life isn't wonderful, but
it's a limited view of their life.
But that's a very limited sliver. That's all we get to see is this peak. With artwork, it's a similar thing. Those might just be tiny little, big peaks.
Those are the best of the things that they do. But how often do they
do them? And
do they have things that don't work out? I mean, people rarely show the stuff that sucks.
And how much time it takes to get to that final piece, or
understanding what goes into it, and all the struggles that came in before,
all the interruptions, and then to the artist, it maybe doesn't feel that good to make. It may end up looking to our eyes like, wow, that's amazing.
But they see every
flaw.
I remember talking to Jeffrey Lloyd Dever, and I don't know how many of you know who he is, but he's in museums. He's this high-end
I don't know.
polymer mix. You don't know. Polymer mixed media guy. And his stuff looks like the most perfectly finished pieces you've ever seen. And I remember standing and talking to him at the Racine Museum in Wisconsin. And I was telling him just how perfectly finished his work is. It just amazes me. And he's like, you don't understand. There are flaws all over that thing. I'm like, where? He's like, oh, I can see them from here. And I'm like, I don't see them. So we see things differently than other people see our work as well. So we can also be very hard on ourselves, especially when we're looking at other people's work that looks so perfect, not realizing that we're so close up on our work that our idea of our work can be very different than what the outside world would see, or how other people would see it.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
So, but I think the biggest problem with social media is if you spend a lot of time on it, you're thinking, so many people are on there.
It feels like an ocean. It is an ocean. It's like, I think of, better than an ocean, I always think of like a sandy beach, each grain of sand. It's like you're walking on it, and each grain of sand is an artist, let's say, there's
doing amazing work.
And you could go miles and you can,
Jesus.
It feels like it just doesn't end.
And where are you in that?
Exactly. It makes you feel small.
Where are you in that? You feel like you're just buried under all those people.
But why do we feel small? Should we have this sense of being aggrandized and big? Is that why we do it? Or is that motivating in some way?
I don't know. And that's another thing we were thinking about. Big artists that are alive and working now, how do they handle it? And I couldn't think of a household name that's a big visual artist. Well, except one. Most people know who Banksy is, so there's that. But I think the main point is that there are so many people out there with so much good work, and they have a way of showing it without having to go through a filter, having to have a gallery vet them and have someone say this is something that needs to be presented to the world as some of the best artwork. I think one of the things is there's a lot more people in the world. The population is much larger.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people, and a lot of people out there doing art, and there's a lot of ways for them to get it out there. So we feel just lost in all of this work and this amazing work. It's just so kind of like nefarious that I don't know why that word sticks with me.
Nefarious.
I think I said it in the last podcast. It's just been hanging around in my head.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of work that's put out there that has been doctored. It's been done digitally. It's been AI'd. It's
enhanced,
and we're looking at stuff that has not really been hand done.
Not as handmade. Even though you could say technology has a hand in
it can be,
the newest version of our creative output as a species.
Right. And that's part of the conversation about doing hard work that I was talking about. Is like, are we going to lose the skill sets that required to sketch and paint and everything by hand because we have all this digital stuff. But right now we are impressed when we see something that is supposed to have been done by hand.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
And unfortunately, I noticed that.
I have. When I work my sketchbooks by hand with pencils and markers and paints and whatnot. And it's a whole different vibe when I post that as opposed to when I do a lot of stuff on an app. Art.
Yeah.
And digital art's really cool. But at the same time...
But there is a quality to hand-done stuff.
You can just see it. You feel it. And it's something you can't describe, but go ahead.
Social media shows us perfectly composed, drawn, painted pieces that we're impressed by, and then we compare that to ourselves. So if you've discovered that social media is a problem, you can do what I did. And I have taken all my social media apps. Well, I didn't take them off my phone, but I deleted the icons. So I have to dig down to get into them.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did. Because I don't want them. I don't want them at my fingertips. I don't want to be like, oh, I'm bored. I'm going to go on Instagram and look at what people are doing. I want that stuff out of my head.
I mean, the positive to the social media is you're feeding your eyes and you got eye candy and you got input. But the downfall is definitely the malaise that we can get into.
Comparison that we can get to.
You could talk about Screen's End too.
We could talk about Screen's End. So you can get an app on your phone that will block your apps for you.
Yeah.
During certain times, or
just limit your time.
Or limit how much time you work on it. So we have one that we both put on everything.
And we're not trying to promote this
No,
thing.
we don't know. But if this company wants to help, this company wants to sponsor this podcast. It's called Screen's End.
Yeah, you know, first when you open an app, it'll say, is this important? And then if you hit yes, unlock it, then it waits 5 seconds.
Well, you can set all that up too.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
you can have it wait half a minute if you want, or whatever, to make sure you really want to get on there.
Yeah.
And then you can stay on for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You can set times. Like, I'm a little obsessed with the news right now because the best drama on TV right now is the freaking elections.
Yeah, you can't write stuff this good.
It's just so crazy. So I have it where I can only freely get into any of my news apps or YouTube from 9 a.m. to 9:30 and 8:30 to 9 at night.
Oh, interesting.
So I have 2 half-hour periods that if I want to get in there without having to go through all my screen stuff and then get kicked out in 10 minutes.
So you got to work for it a little harder.
Yeah. So those are my free times. So and I also don't get notices from any of them during that time either. And
great.
I think it's part of that app. So it's a great little app, and there's other ones out there, but you can totally customize them so you're not always dealing with the screen block, because there's certain times periods you may need to get into those apps. But it really helps. Like, I don't like getting on social media, but every once in a while I have to, because people message me, like you guys message me. Yeah, so I have to get on there, but I don't want to get caught up in the timeline. That can help curb how much time you spend on social media. If that is one of the issues that is making you feel poorly about what you're doing, it has drained your motivation, and you're identifying it as a problem for you. And then we can go talk about when you have ingrained expectations. And this, like you already mentioned, Brett, you have had a lot of that when you were younger. Like, you were told not to ever copy, and you didn't want to learn new things because you felt like everything was
that it would take
coming
something
from yourself.
away. Yeah, that it would take something away from my own point of view, or
your
my
original
own way of
voice
being.
and authenticity and all
and
that.
there is a merit to that, because I'm not just copying blindly other artists, but at the same time, it's a language that we speak visually. In order to express ourselves more articulately, we have to know our visual language. It's like knowing the alphabet in order to write poetry.
Right, exactly.
So, but that's something I didn't understand. So I just created very intuitively. But then there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not putting that down. But it is professionally, I've had to learn over the years to assimilate to a degree without losing, the thing that I want to say or to do. It's not just performing visual tricks that you learn. It's more like, what do you do with those things? And then you can invent things by doing hybrids of different kinds of art that you love.
I mean, it can be a handicap if you want to. Like, I would, and we were both brought up in a similar way, and I don't remember where I got it from, but the idea that you weren't supposed to copy. Your stuff had to be your work. And there's a positive thing to that, for sure. And in art school, when I was in art school, we did not do a lot of copying. I hear that happening more and more from people I know that are in art school, where they do a lot of replication. And way back when, people were journeymen to artists and learned their...
That's right. Leonardo and
they learned
all of
their
them.
style. They learned all their tricks, and then they branched out from there.
It's like learning how to speak a language in order to...
Right. And I think
in order to speak.
It might have but it might have handicapped us, because instead of having learned and standing on the shoulders of other people, we were climbing all on our own. So it could have, we could have been maybe farther along or whatnot.
I kind of feel like that.
But
it didn't hurt my drive. That's the thing. I was
exactly.
very driven, and I just kept producing, even though I look back at, work when I was 10, and it's like, oh, how much I can see my influences, actually. How much more I could have maybe accomplished if I had not copied, but studied other ways. But that's something you learn in college as you
But it's just a different
mind.
path, and we've ended up with our style and our voice because we took a different path. In the end, we still have been artists all our life.
Somehow we made it through.
And we're still hanging on.
Yeah.
So those kinds of expectations of thinking it's just coming from you, and there's also the expectations in our culture in the United States, for sure, and in a lot of Western cultures, where you feel like you have to make money at what you're doing, and
it validates it somehow.
It validates it. somehow. And it's also something that's ingrained with us because, like, why are you doing that if you're not going to sell it and make money? Or at least that you're going to make it and then be able to sell it enough that you can buy more materials and keep doing what you're doing. But people forget that making art is not about it being a product. Most of the time, for some people it is because they're doing it for a living. They have to sell the stuff to get food on the table and all that. But it's a process. It's an experience. It's a journey. And if you think like, I'm not selling, I'm not, making the money I need to off of this stuff.
It's unmotivating, but it shouldn't be that way.
And it can be, you know what? And if you go to a show, and I have had shows where I've gone and, or mailed them in or whatnot, and I haven't made anything, I'm like, my gosh, I didn't hardly cover my costs, it hurts.
Yeah.
It can really put you down for a little while, but you go through that. You acknowledge the emotion and you're like, that didn't work. But you know what? No matter what, whether you sell it or not, you got the experience of making those things. And as long as you're making the things that you love, you're making something that you enjoy. If you're enjoying the process, it's still valuable. It's
it. Yeah.
Well,
that's
it's
true.
like I say,
it's true.
Like people are like, I need to get something out of this. I'm like, if you go on a hike or you go sail on a boat or you go on a trip, are you expecting to have a product or something at the end of it?
Yeah.
You're not. You go on that because the process, the journey, the experience itself is what you get out of it.
Yeah,
so
you don't know what to
money.
expect exactly. You'll be on the ocean, but you don't know exactly.
Hopefully, if you're in a boat,
and hopefully the boat won't go down.
And
but
if
it
hiking,
does,
you hope not to be on the ocean. Details, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you get more, you get something out of it. I mean, at the end of our lives, we're probably not going to have a lot of these things, or if we do, they're not going to be important, but our experiences, our memories, the things we do with other people comes out of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you made the work and you enjoyed making the work and you're proud of your work, whether or not it sells, you've got to look at it and say, not that it's bad work. It not selling doesn't mean it's bad work. It means you're in the wrong market. Or the market wasn't there that day. Your people, your customers weren't there that day.
Yeah.
Then you have to say, okay, it's not you. If you looked at it and you thought, this is good work, I'm putting this out there because I love what I did. There's other people that will love what you did, but maybe that day they weren't there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or
ask Van Gogh, right?
Right, poor guy. Or if you're expecting awards or accolades or anything of that sort, that could be another thing that you're expecting, like putting stuff out online and expecting to get a lot of likes, and then you don't. Never, ever, and I've said this before,
algorithms,
so I apologize. I'm repeating myself. Don't think that how many likes you get on your work is a judgment of whether it's good or not. Because you can put something out and you just happen to hit a quiet period in who your work gets sent to, whose pages or timelines they're going to be on. Or, a lot of people are on at the same time, which totally dilutes the option in the possibility of people seeing your work and liking it. So you can't judge it by that, So, I mean, if you get a lot of likes, you could also say you can't judge that it's good because you got a lot of likes.
Well, if you guys haven't done it, you should hide the amount of likes that shows.
Oh, on Instagram. Brett hides how many likes he gets.
I think it's silly to advertise how many likes. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless you're like Taylor Swift and you get 23 billion likes or
but
something.
But then you don't need to even
But then you don't even care. Exactly. So what's the point? So, that's private information, and I don't even want to value it too much.
Right.
So I dim that out, and it feels good. It feels cleaner to me.
Yeah.
And it's not a value judgment placed on it, because other people can read the amount of likes, and then they instantly think, oh, only 20 people like that. Oh, but 40 people like that one.
Right.
What are they seeing in
it? And then
I start to take that value judgment too.
Yeah.
So to me, it's all about the experimenting and going into the unknown and judge it however you like. If you like it, great. If you don't, it was my experience,
So basically, if you're finding yourself looking at those likes and how many people are liking it.
This is good. Oh, it is good.
Yeah. And your mood is based on whether you get a lot of likes or not, there might be a problem.
Yeah, it is.
If it's affecting your motivation in particular, then it might be something that you want to.
Yeah, big picture, it's about what we're talking about with the motivation. Yeah,
right, exactly. So any of those expectations, if they're not getting met, look for ways to either look at it differently, that you're doing the work for yourself first, and that you're having the experience and the joy of that experience. And then if you do need to make money off it or whatnot, you got to look at your market. You got to look at those very particular things. But try to take away the aspect of these expectations to determine whether I should or shouldn't make art. Yeah, which kind of feeds into the idea of you might feel like, why bother? Because you're frustrated with your own skill level or that it's hard work. And now if you're frustrated because you're trying to do what you're seeing other people do online, just stop that. Just stop that and work on what you want to accomplish in order to say what you want to say, in order to make the things that are in your head and not the stuff that's in your head that looks like other people's stuff online because that's what's in your head. I honestly think people should stay away from social media when you're in when you're in a major creative mode where you're trying to do your own work. I feel like it's just
close your eyes and picture what's in your own mind.
I mean, some people are probably going to be better at ignoring that than other people, but I know it's something that gets into my head.
I would say even still visualizing what it is that we want to do and connecting with how we do what we do, it's still going to fall short of what we wanted it to be.
But if you are short, on certain skills you haven't learned yet or whatnot, don't be hard on yourself, but do learn them. It is an amazing feeling of accomplishment when you can gain a skill and do something that you hadn't done before.
Or that you didn't think you could do.
That you could do a lot of times,
that's
right?
That's super hard because you have to believe that with enough
perseverance,
tenacity, and dedication that you can learn certain things.
I think you can learn anything. Honestly,
you're a professional learner. You are. You're like as learning oriented as it
things.
gets. Yep.
I love to learn new things. Even when it's hard. Although when you don't have a lot of time or whatnot, you feel like, gosh, I just want to learn it faster. And it can be hard work, but do attempt it. Try to gain those skills just one step at a time.
Even doing them really poorly, in my mind.
Initially you're going to do it really poorly. So just go out there and do it a lot. Do it poorly a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Over and over again. And then you feel like, oh, why am I doing it? You can get back to that. Look, it just didn't work. It didn't work. But the 10th or 11th time, it might start to work.
Or 100th time.
Or 150th time.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because it's about getting your brain and your brain connected to your hand in a way that can produce what it is that you need to do.
I have drawn so much in my life. Gosh, it becomes a little, it's like speaking a language the more you do it,
Yeah.
A lot of people who don't draw, they might be inclined to say, I don't know how you do it, but you have to have the inclination to want to sit down and create.
Yeah, but if you have the inclination and you're having a hard time with it and you could be saying, this is so hard, why am I bothering? I'm never going to be able to do it.
That's true.
If you want to do it, you can do it. It just depends on how motivated you are to do it and what it's going, measure what it's going to do for you when you get to the point where you've learned it, and try to keep your eye on the end result that you're after. I think you can keep yourself motivated by knowing what the end goal is and then just take it one small thing at a time and don't worry about how quickly. We always want everything to happen very quickly.
Only because we're in a world that everything
happens very quickly.
Instant gratification.
I know. Enjoy the process of learning. Enjoy the little discoveries. Enjoy the little accomplishments.
And enjoy the mistakes,
Okay, so then there's also this thing about not being sure what to create. And we feel like we don't have any ideas. We don't have any inspiration. 2 episodes ago, you can listen to the Mindfully Inspired episode about how to find more inspiration and be more aware of inspiration. I think when we don't know what to create, I think it's 2 things. I think it's one, not getting out and about and finding inspiration, like being inspired, like not going to galleries, not talking to other artists, not going to shows, not
taking a walk in the park.
Even that kind of stuff. But if you're feeling uninspired and you're feeling like you don't know what to create, I think maybe you haven't had enough input to have an opinion on what else there is that you want to say, what you want to talk about.
I would say uncovering things in yourself that are already there, but you're not aware of.
Yeah, we all have things to say, but sometimes they get buried under the day-to-day life all the minutiae of the things we have to do. And I strongly encourage people to, number one, like at the end of every podcast, I say, feed your muse, do something new, go out and have new experiences, because that's what is going to feed you. So if you're like, I don't feel like I have anything to say anymore, I'm not sure what I want to do, I'm not sure what I want to create, it may be because you haven't given yourself and your muse the kind of experiences that get you thinking,
Yeah.
And and sometimes even a good book can give you the unwrap something in you that's like, oh, I had thought about this when I was younger, haven't thought about it since then. That's something I'm really interested in. Or the other thing about new experiences, and I think this is probably the biggest thing really, is that serendipity will drop things in your lap. Like,
you can't force these things.
How many people have these really crazy passion for a job that came to them through some one-time experience they had? Serendipity is only going to happen if you're out there doing things. So taking trips, hitting the road, and going out to shows, and not necessarily art shows, music shows, going hiking, going and talking to different people, reading different books, listening to different podcasts, whatever it is, you will run into things, the more new things that you experience. And you won't always be looking for that particular thing. So it's kind of hard to say, I'm going to go out and look for this kind of experience. I'm going to go out and hope to run into this kind of thing that's going to feed my art. And you don't need to do that. If there's that kind of space in you that you want to have something more particular to say, or you want something new to say, go out and have the new experiences. And I think it will come to you. And then the other thing is kind of what we just talked about. You may feel like you don't know what to create because of comparisons, looking at what other people are doing, thinking that you need to do something particular. Like when I was a working artist, it was hard not to look at the market and see what other people were selling, what was flying out the door, what was trending at the time, and think I need to make something that will sell. Yeah. I can't say I was ever at a loss at what to make, but sometimes I would be kind of stuck with what to make to sell. And that's not the same thing. I think if you make things based on what you want to make, and then you go find the right market, that you can always be successful, if not all the time, often enough.
I would argue that you should always make the things that you want to make.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to your own work.
So that will take some self-contemplation. Do I feel like I don't have anything to create because I keep trying to make things like other people are making?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Or I keep trying to make things I think will sell. And if you do that, you know what? You need to do what Stephen King calls closing the door, which means that you don't have anybody else's influence in the studio with you when you're creating. And Stephen King has this thing about when he's writing the book initially, he closes the door, which means he's not thinking about his readers, his editors, his wife, anybody else's opinion. He's just going to write what he wants to write. And then he edits with his door open. You create without thinking about what anyone else is going to think of it. And that's a big thing about social media. If you post all the time, if you post as soon as you're done with something, then chances are through the majority of the creation process, you're going to be thinking, what will people think of this? Oh, I've got to make this more dramatic, or I've got to make this more like what other people are doing, because you want to get that feedback. I would say you should give yourself some period of time between when you finish something and when it actually gets posted. Because for two reasons. One, because I think you will be less likely to think about what will people say when I get this posted at the end of the day or end of the week, whenever it's done. And the other thing is you will look at it differently.
Yeah, for sure.
2, 3, 4, 6 months down the road, and you may not like it, or you may really like it a lot better, or you may see what needs to be improved, and you can make those tweaks and put something out there that you're really, real super proud of.
Some of my favorite things I've done, after I've done them, I don't like them at all. And then I'll look at them 6 months later and I'm like, oh, I really like that. Because it does feel very different in its own way, like to break out of routines and then just sort of let go.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it. Sort of just go into the unknown and see what comes out. And a lot of the time it just feels like chaos when I'm doing it. But then, and the result, that experience of chaos, the result to me is chaos. But then when I look back at it, in 6 months, I'm like, oh, there's something really interesting there for me now. Yeah. Which I didn't have eyes for.
Partial
before.
Work, which is actually a really cool thing where, like, facing the blank page is hard. Starting from nothing is hard. So sometimes you feel like you don't have anything to say because facing the blank page or the blank canvas or whatever, there's so many possibilities that it's too much. So if you just do whatever comes to mind, whatever you feel like, and then you just put it away and you come back to it later, you're looking at something that is no longer a blank page. but it's a place to start. You have some things that you can begin with, some limitations to what you can do because it's already been predetermined by the size that you started with or the colors that you're using or whatnot. And you have the limitations that can help you work out something without the overwhelming feeling that we get when we're facing all the creative choices that we have on a blank page.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts about if you're not sure what you want to create. New experiences, get out there, get that muse fed, and then also give yourself
let go.
The opportunity to, just do things without anybody else in your head.
Yeah.
And then maybe that's even a third thing. Do things part way or do things and then put them away and then come back to them later. And you may see what you didn't see. Like sometimes I make things and I go back to them later. I'm like, what was I doing there? And then I try to read into my own work, not remembering what I was doing. And I'll see themes I didn't realize that I was putting in there, like subconscious themes.
And that's where the subconscious thing comes into play. We need to be open for that being part of the process and not to assume that we have complete dominion and control over everything we do. I think that's a dead end. It's a dead end.
Yeah. So that's another one. And then if you just aren't excited by your materials anymore, you don't feel a challenge or you feel like what you do is all work and you're not enjoying it, I would say stop working with that material. Stop doing what you're doing. Now, not everybody has that choice because you've built up a business around it and you're selling, the same kinds of things all the time. And that's what pays your bills. And I know that's hard, but if that's the case, then maybe you need to make room for something new. Again, new experiences are really, I think, at the root of really vibrant creativity. If the materials, the style, the form, whatever it is that you're doing is becoming really hard for you to get excited about. And if you're not excited about your art, it's not going to come across in what you're making either. So you could set your materials aside. You could try something else. You could, maybe not full time, but on the side.
Yeah, maybe not to stop doing it, but just take a break from doing it.
But you could continue to do, let's say, when I was a working artist and I was trying to make money, I was trying to pay my bills with it. There was a point at which I was like, I want to do something very different. Well, what I ended up doing is I was doing that stuff on the side and I ended up opening an Etsy shop and I sold this other new work through Etsy, but I got to do what I wanted to do. And having that motivation and being inspired by the new work helped me when I had to go make the work for the shows. A lot of what I was doing there worked its way into the more fantastical pieces that I had to make in order to feed that particular market. But I was looking at it from a different angle, like a different position suddenly, because I was working on work that was very different. I was working on wall pieces instead of sculptural pieces and jewelry. And I ended up taking those skills that I was learning doing that, and I made fossils, which sold, they just flew out the door. It was great. So I found something that could sell and could make money and could also use a skill that I was new to and excited about.
I could see Levin making fossils. That's cool.
Yeah, I made fossils, and then I would mold them and cast them with resin and paint them and all this stuff. So it's a whole different set of skills in a lot of ways for me. Just stretch yourself. You may feel like you can't stretch yourself, but I'm sure you can.
Well, it's our nature. We don't like change.
Yeah. Some people don't like change.
I like change, but it depends on the change, I think.
Yeah, I love change. As for an artist, I think change is good. Not that if you enjoy
change,
making...
you want everything the same all the time.
I mean, if you do well selling the same thing all the time...
Yeah.
You could probably continue that for a little while, but eventually you're going to start...
It gets old.
Your market's going to start dwindling because you're so used to it. So you should freshen up what you're doing anyway. So if you aren't excited by what you're doing, look for the ways that you can make change in your life. And even if you feel like I can't make new art, maybe you can do new side things. Maybe you could go out on new excursions or, go to different types of galleries or just do something to bring something new into your life and get your mind to shift gears more so than what you'd been doing before. So I hope that's helpful. And then I guess the last thing is really when you're dealing with outside situations that are affecting your work and you're just feeling like, why? Existential crises are often due to outside issues. When you are getting depressed because whatever, I've had some issues the past couple of years because there's been some family things going on that have been really hard, or because when I closed up, well, I didn't close up, I stopped producing in the publication business, and I didn't realize how much I depended on my constant deadlines. I had a magazine out every 3 months. I had a newsletter twice a month. I had a blog 3 times a week.
You were on a production pipeline.
I was constant. I always had deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly I had no deadlines.
Yeah.
And wow, it was just like being dropped. Like I was floating around on a glider and then someone just cut the wings off of it. I just, none.
Yeah.
And that was really, really hard. And you hear that from a lot of people who have retired. You know, they retire from a job and then they just are like, I don't know what I'm doing with myself.
Yeah.
You know, so you can get depressed for a whole myriad of reasons.
Well, a sense of purpose, you know.
Yeah, sense of purpose is so important.
And especially when you're used to that sense of purpose, including hitting deadlines that are outside of yourself.
Or you have a job that feeds it to you and you have no choice, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're dealing with depression, do find, obviously find help and find the source, and don't be hard on yourself about not finding the motivation to do your work, because that will often come hand in hand. You will have a hard time finding the joy and the motivation to do your work when you're dealing with outside influences like that. And of course, like grief, the loss of family members or even pets or loss of a job. I mean, there's grief in that too. Those things can all...
be kind to yourself.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And really affect you. And it's going to take time, and that's fine, And if you can find the way to work through what you're dealing with through your own artwork, perhaps you can talk to somebody about how you can do that. And of course, everybody's situation is going to be different. So there's nothing specific we can offer on that. But, it is definitely, art can be therapeutic, of course. And then some people, it's health situations. Like people, you get arthritis, it's harder to work with your materials, or, eyesight issues, or sitting too long or whatnot. There are people out there that will help you figure this stuff out. Your doctor can help you figure out. Physical therapists can help you figure it out. Therapists can help you figure it out. Physical limitations are just limitations. If that makes sense. That seems like a really dumb comment. But no.
And it is.
Physical limitations are limitations. But I mean, like, we all have limitations. Whether it's a limitation on how much time we have during the day, how much money we have from the materials we can buy, on what we're able to do because we have other obligations. If you have a physical limitation, it's just another hurdle. And life is all about working those hurdles. And hurdles are just like an everyday thing, right? So this is the part I talked about at the beginning that's not really a, here's a problem, here's how to fix it thing. Like this ennui, this being hard on ourselves, this lack of motivation seems to be fairly common. I don't know any artists or creatives that don't actually get into this state at some point in time. And why is that? Is it because of what we do, or is it simply part of what it means to be a creative? It's like, I'm very much a problem solver. I like to fix things, as we mentioned.
I will attest to that.
And this last week, I actually started working on a draft for a podcast about not fixing things. And it got me thinking, because these are overlapping. And I'm like, I'm always trying to give you solutions, but maybe sometimes things don't need to be fixed.
Yeah, I agree.
So maybe these moments where we lack motivation or have these existential doubts, maybe it's necessary. Maybe we are supposed to be like this. I'd like to suggest that maybe these periods are part of just the artistic process. Perhaps we need to get down into that valley just to give the muse time to, well,
like gestate or whatever. Yeah, muse around.
To muse things.
Hey, muse it up.
I wonder if this happens more regularly for artists or creatives than for other people. I don't know. But because we go through these periods of intense creativity and heightened excitement, and we just kind of pour ourselves into our work, and then, we come out the other side, and maybe we're spent, or maybe we lack the energy to get started on something else, or our idea about what the results will be. We thought we might be getting awards for our work, or a lot of likes online or something. And if the results don't meet our expectations, I think it can hit us really hard. Or do you actually get what you're hoping for, and then after that, it's kind of like a, now what?
Anticlimactic kind of thing.
Yeah. Like back in the day, I had this goal in 5 years, I would get this particular award at this huge show that I did. And I got it in 3 years, and it was wonderful. And that weekend, I was on a high all weekend. And then I came home, and I was like, what now?
Yeah.
And it's actually why I started the magazine, but because I was looking for the next thing. But it can be a period of down after having a big high as well. But isn't that just part of the, process of, I mean, life?
Yeah, the cycle.
Right? It's just the ups and downs. But yeah, I think the actual work, the intense desire and hope and anticipation and fear that we have as we work on our stuff is in a way maybe what we're doing it for versus like the award or the accolades or the recognition. But all of that whole process, it's so exciting. Or, it can be scary and stressful and all that kind of stuff. But I think we kind of feed on it a little bit,
It seems like because it's our nature to have variety and the ups and the downs.
Yeah, I think we spend all this time working towards and anticipating the possibility of being successful or reaching some particular goal or some kind of marker in our career. And then once we've reached it, it does have a letdown period, but it should, because when you have these higher periods and these lower periods, the higher periods in your life or career, in your art, whatever, you can appreciate those more because you have downtime. You have times where they're not like that. So there's a
contrast.
Comparison. There's a contrast. Yeah, exactly. So maybe after you've reached a goal, even if it's just finishing a really big complex piece or getting that award or whatever that you're after, when you get back to the grind, to the day-to-day, to the normal and the ordinary parts of our lives, we can feel a little let down, but maybe that's the way it's supposed to go. Because that time when you're not feeling like you know what to do next or are disappointed by how things turned out, or you're lacking the motivation for any of the reasons that we just talked about, maybe that's our internal creative mechanism getting kind of wound up underneath it all, because at some point, don't you just get mad if you feel lost or hopeless or you're frustrated with your work, right?
I guess so, yeah. And I hadn't thought about it that way, but...
Yeah, and I think maybe those kinds of emotions can lead you to push yourself to find the next thing that you want to do. I think it can put you in a position to look into the things you might not have done before, and maybe it'll push you past any kind of defeatist feelings that we have when things didn't work out.
Maybe it's the idea that we're never really satisfied and we want to just keep going, even if we have a little success and as we go.
Yes, exactly. And I think not being satisfied is a good thing. Like, I used to say that I don't want to be happy, and people would be like, you're crazy. More precisely, I don't want to be content, because if you're just content, then you're good. Everything's good. What do you have to look forward to?
Yeah.
I think struggle is a big part of what gets us going, what gets us out of bed every day, because we got to go do this thing. We got to go solve this problem. We got to reach this goal. We got to accomplish this thing that we want to accomplish. And so if we have these down periods, these are maybe rest periods for our muse and for our creativity. And it gives us potential motivation to push us into something else new and exciting that will get us motivated again. But maybe we need to go through these periods. And so maybe we shouldn't be looking at them as bad things, but yes, we could look at them as gifts of some sort.
Painful gifts. Sorry.
Painful gifts. Sometimes painful, but they're gifts, I swear.
Don't necessarily want. Yeah.
So maybe these downtimes are a regular and necessary part of being a creative, because the not so good times make the good times, or the highs, feel amazing and memorable and make these low times seem worth working through.
So you got to take the good with the bad.
It's that. And I think as creatives, we are fed by the things that we struggle through. Mm-hmm. I mean, not that I don't know people that are very happy people and they make art, but I think a lot of us make art because it's a struggle, because we are looking for answers or truth, or looking for a way to express these things that are kind of bottled up inside of us. So maybe when we're not motivated, when we're frustrated, when we're in these points of, I don't know why I should bother, when you hear that in your head, maybe you should be thinking, okay, yes, I'm in that point of the process, and in that point of the cycle that I think we all go through as creatives.
Then you don't fight it or feel bad.
Right. And maybe not stress out about it too much. All the things that we talked about, the suggestions that we made about going and finding new things or trying new art or doing whatever it is that you need to do to fight the particular type of listlessness or lack of motivation that you have, I think those are all very relevant and you should try them. But also don't worry about the fact that you're in that position, because they just add to the emotional pain
Oh, I see.
of those times. Instead,
So
just say,
don't fight it.
Yeah, don't fight it. It is what it is. Look at it as time to step back and work through what you're doing and where you're going, where you're going next.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So that was my thought.
I like that
Yeah.
thought.
Just to maybe not fight this quite so much. Put the solutions into place, but it is what it is. It's part of the cycle.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I like that.
Yeah.
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 Seeing it as part of the process.
Yeah. So we'll leave you that thought. And if you have your own thoughts or you have your own stories or anything that you would like to tell me, you can write me at thesagearts.com. You can reach out on Instagram or Facebook and leave me a message or even respond to a post. And if you listen to these shows and you're really inspired and you feel like this has value and you want to give back, you are more than welcome to donate through the Buy Me a Coffee buttons or the PayPal buttons. You'll find the links or buttons in your show notes or description section of wherever you're listening to this podcast from or on the homepage of thesagearts.com. You can scroll down about kind of halfway and you'll find those buttons there. And if you haven't done so already, do remember to hit the follow button for the podcast from whatever podcast player you're in, or if you're on YouTube, the subscribe button. And then if you would like to leave me a review, I haven't been asking for them, but I really should have been, I suppose, this whole time. But I'd love to get reviews because it does help other people who are interested in the podcast know whether this is the kind of thing that they want to spend their precious time on. But in any case, thank you for joining us for this one. And thank you, Brett, for being here. And thank you, River, for sleeping. And thank you, Ember, for not bothering your sister.
She really did sleep. That was great.
she conked out. Thank goodness. I'm so glad we got to do this. I wasn't sure we were going to manage it with a dog.
Yeah, no, they did great.
So
the drugs probably helped, though.
The drugs totally helped.
Us.
The ones that we took?
Just kidding, yeah. Yeah, all that heroin was wonderful.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do drugs.
Yeah.
We literally don't.
Yeah.
Advil.
Hello.
Lots of
Hello.
Advil, no. But yeah,
the dog had to be on some
River's
a little bit of a sedative.
Yeah, River's on medications.
To help her leg heal. So
yeah. So thank you, everybody. And for all of you out there, thank you for joining us. And do go out there and feed that muse and get those new experiences and keep your motivation up. And then don't forget to be true to your weirdness and join us again next time on the Sage Arts Podcast.
Cool.
Thanks, Brett.
Yeah.